right. Good afternoon, everyone. They said that let's save the best for the last, right? So I know you cannot wait to end up these today's panels, but let me tell you something. Matt just arrived this morning from San Francisco just to be here to share with us today. So let's give applause for Matt, yeah? So after this, he can rest, really a long rest. All right, so before I continue, let me start with Indonesian pantun, yeah, just so to set the fire. So for Indonesian folks and Malaysia, when I say cakep ya, but for non-bahasa, non-Malay folks, I have one for you made by ChatGPT, and then you can see the first one, and then like follow whatever they're doing. Okay, langit senja mulai merona. Panel terakhir tak kalah seru. ChatGPT banget. Jurnalisme dan teknologi berpadu makna. Mari semangat sampai akhir waktu. Oke, now the English version ya. Jadi bilangnya awesome gitu ya. Kalau Australian bilangnya fantastic, tapi kita awesome aja. Pick a mango behind the gate. Bring it home and don't be late. Where's the non-Bahasa, non-Malay folks? You can say awesome, okay? Okay, Irene? Journalists now are tech-savvy and bright. With data and tools, they chase the light. Let's give applause to the two speakers. Please come to the stage. All right, so this panel aims to explore or to address important questions. What solutions that are available now to help prepare for the future of digital ecosystem? Day one, we already listened to the content and storytelling ideas in the age of AI. We listen about the policy. We listen about how bad AI technology, and then we listen how good AI technology, yeah, currently. Now we have two amazing thinkers and practitioners that will address the question that actually sits at the intersection of journalism, AI, and digital power. We will listen from them later. Can we control our data, or can we reclaim our data? Yeah, I have Sergio Spagnuolo here, quite long technical. Okay, so I will read Sergio profile. Sergio Spagnuolo, data journalist and founder of Nucleo Jornalismo, who has led a cross-country analysis on how news websites in Brazil, in Indonesia and US, yeah, protect their data using data blockers. And then the presentation will follow by Matt. Matt will introduce a bold proposal for attribution-based AI to reclaim the journalism today. All right, so I will give them, each of them 20 minutes to present, and then we will follow by question and answer. Okay, over to you. Yes, you go first.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very good to be in the last panel because I can talk a lot of stuff here, and if I'm not that good, it doesn't matter anyway because everybody's kind of tired, so I'll do my best anyway. So we're going to talk about what we're calling the protocol gap, which is research we have done about the use of robots.txt files regarding AI companies scraping of journalistic content. So just a little bit about myself. I'm the founder and executive director of Nucleo Jornalismo, which is a tech news website based in Brazil. I'm a data journalist pioneer in my country. I started this early 2010s. One of the first ones there doing data journalism. Now it's a much bigger community. I'm also an innovation consultant working with several different international organizations. I'm not an academic, so I'm going to talk a lot about data here and going to present some very new, fresh numbers about your news ecosystem and Brazil's as well. First time I'm going to mention this in a public setting, so it's very exciting for me. Oh, I don't know how that got up in there, but that's my dog. I love her. She's amazing, so I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I guess I get homesick when I'm traveling. Yeah, and just put her picture there. I'm sorry, it won't happen again. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I have 2 other dogs. I forgot about this picture. I'm sorry, really sorry. I also would like to make a few acknowledgements. First, Irene Liu and Jessica White from IFPIN. Thank you very much for your help in this process. It was very important. Paula Miralha, unfortunately, wasn't able to be here, and Esther, who works with her, also helped in this to make this happen. And of course, I would like to thank our good partners of AMSI and AGI for making this happen. It's awesome. Thank you very much for this invitation. And of course, our friend Mike there from Gibbs, who also is helping in this process. So let's start from the basics, right? We're living in an LLM-powered new world in technology, right? Everybody's talking about this for the past 2 years. Companies are investing half $1 trillion in data centers to make more LLMs, to make it bigger, to make it more useful, whatever. And we have reason to believe that they are basically using all the data, all the data that is publicly available on the internet. Nothing got past them, at least until 2022, right? But they still need much more data to grow the models, to make it more useful, to make it more powerful, to make money out of it, or whatever. And to achieve what they're calling artificial general intelligence or super intelligence, which basically don't mean much for many people because each CEO from tech companies have different definitions of what it is, what it can do, and whatever. But you can assume that's a new state of usefulness and capabilities out of LLMs. So we get a few sources that are very constant streams, high volume sources of training data for those companies. And of course, those are social media platforms. You have YouTube. Every day, billions of hours of content are being uploaded into YouTube. You have Reddit. You have all the Meta platforms. You have several other platforms that are, publishing content all the time. And despite some privacy policies that they might have, some of them say that you can opt out training, giving your data for training their models and stuff. If you're using those platforms for your news organization, you should assume that all the content is being used to train their models, regardless of some internal privacy policy they might have. But of course, what other source of high volume, constant stream, and most of all, high quality data is, right? It's the news. It's your news organization, it's mine, it's organization in the US, all over the world. So AI companies, they want your data, they want your content, they need your content to grow their models and make it better. We can see that synthetic data is not doing so well to feed its own systems. When the model feeds itself, it doesn't tend to go super well. Maybe some researchers that studied that were in a different panel today, maybe they know more about this, but it's my impression that it's not working super well for them. And they will go after your data, regardless of the way, right? So why would you accept handing over your data? First of all, you might rank higher in a search engine. You know, like the AI search engines are really picking up, getting some steam. You can improve your brand authority. You know, you get shown more and people recognize your brand more. You get some trade-offs, you know, get insights, you get some productivity gains, efficiency gains. You can expect sometimes if you give your data some financial incentives in some cases, especially in the US, you know, but maybe some other places they might start doing some deals. And of course, some audience education, you know, you can help improve, like we're listening about it today, improving the LLM for your language or local languages all over the world. Why would you avoid that? That's a very important question, maybe the most important question of the two of those two questions. You know, first, they're not giving financial incentives. They're billion-dollar companies with billion-dollar investments, and they are not, you know, they're holding on to. They're spending billions of dollars on GPUs. The executive from Goto said H100s that cost like $40,000, $30,000 per unit. And they're buying hundreds of thousands of them, but they won't spend much to license any data, right? You have no control of how your data is collected and used afterwards. That might be a concern for some people. You have valuable intellectual property. It's your content, you're investing in it, it's useful for your community. Some privacy concerns, that's a big one as well. You might be pissed off because they already did that once with your data, and you say, oh, no, not again, right? But no matter the reason, either you give your data or you don't give your data, it all should be your choice and not a consequence of some inaction or some lack of knowledge that you might have about how such things work. So let's understand a little bit the actions involved in this. If you want to allow companies to get data from your website, basically you don't need to do anything. They're going to go there and get it. They're very tech savvy, as you might imagine. So if they want to get your data, they'll find ways to get it. But if you want to block it, there are a few ways to do that. One of them is like hard paywalls. You can have a hard paywall on your website, kind of login kind of thing. You know, it's very hard for them to get it. They still can get it, but it gets harder. You can do some litigation, as the New York Times is doing, but you need some serious money to do that, to pay for lawyers and stuff. You can have some technical diversion, like IP limiting, honeypots, all this kind of stuff, which they also know about it, and they have ways around it. But you know, we have Cloudflare now doing its own thing to block AI agents. I don't know how effective it is yet, but you know, they're trying, I guess. And some publishers might see some benefits in using it. And you have the robots.txt file. And the last one, it's way easier and way cheaper than all the other methods, right? So what are they? Those are text files that are part of a protocol created many years ago that basically sends a message to bots on the internet on how to handle the content on your website. It's called the Robots Execution Protocol. It was created in 1994. It's been around for a long time. It was mostly used for SEO purposes, you know, like search engines and stuff. It's a text file that goes to the root of your domain name. So you get tempo.co, right? And if you put /robot.txt, you're going to find that file over there on the root directory of your website. And it basically gives you some allow or disallow parameters that you can tell the bots there that you want them there or you don't want them there, they can use your content or not. It's very, very important to note that this is not technically enforceable. That the file on the root domain of your website is telling the bot that you don't want them there, but it cannot technically block it. It's just a directive that it's a message that you're sending that, don't get my content, or, oh, feel free to get my content, right? It's very important. It's kind of an honored game, gentleman's agreement, if you will. So you will have to have some trust to see that there is being observed, right? However, by clearly stating that you don't want for them to get your data, for instance, you're establishing some sort of moral and even legal foundation to make a case in the courts or with your public or whatever, that you stated that, and all the same they went there and got your data. So you kind of established some sort of moral foundation and legal foundation for that. And then you can negotiate, you can create transparency reports, you can shame them or whatever you want to do, but it's good that you state that publicly and availably for everyone. So my analysis tells me that in Brazil, almost 80% of news websites there are using robots.txt files somehow. In Indonesia, that number is a little bit lower, is 60%, but most of the websites, nevertheless. In the US, I'm using the US here as a baseline for comparison. It's around 74%. So a lot of websites use those files. A lot of it comes with the template. If you're using WordPress and stuff, it already comes with robots.txt file by default. It's not very useful. Maybe you have Yoast or some plugin that do some SEO stuff for you, but it's basically not governing that directive for your website. There are currently 87 AI agents. We call AI agents the robots from the AI companies going to fetch the data from your website. So there are currently 87 AI agents publicly identified. This comes from a public repository on GitHub. I talked to the owner of this repository. It has around 50 collaborators. So it's a community trying to identify those bots and make it open source so not only news organizations, but everyone can know who they are. So what the data has to say, right? Just before I show you some of the results, know that they were generated on July 17. I'm using really fresh data. The data from Brazil, the website URLs from Brazil comes from Atlas da Notícia, which is an open source project that maps literally every single news organization in Brazil. And the data from Indonesia comes from the association, from AMSI and AGI. And thank you very much for providing this data for us. And the final working paper is coming soon. Again, I'm not academic. It's not an academic paper. I'm a data journalist. I do have some methodology rigor and stuff, but I'm not doing peer review things. I'm more of a get the data, get the results, and provide the data for smarter people to use the way they want it. So in Brazil, in Indonesia, around 5 to 6% of the websites. It's very similar data between both countries. I think there's a lot of similarities, like first time in here, first time in Asia ever. But I think there's a lot of similarities between the media landscape of our countries. And basically, only 5 to 6% of the news websites there are blocking at least one AI agent in their website. That means they have a very permissive AI policy. Our websites from Brazil and Indonesia, they're mostly allowing AI companies to just go there and get the data without ever stating your preferences, your choices, your desires about what you do with your own content, right? When you compare that to the United States, 35% of news websites in the United States block at least one AI agent. They are much more restrictive about the use of their own data. I'm using them as a benchmark because most of the big tech companies are from there, and I think they are taught more about this sort of thing. So you can see that they are a little bit ahead of us in blocking this sort of user agent from getting their content for free. Here I prepared some charts just to give a sense of of how this looks in a plotted chart. In Brazil, we are using a sample of 4,000 news websites. In Indonesia, it's almost 2,000. In the US, it's almost 6,000 news websites. So it's kind of a comparable sizes, and, but you can see that the US is a little bit ahead. And you can also use this chart as to see the permissiveness of our websites compared to the US. On average, when a news website in the US block some AI agent, it is basically blocking at, on average 23 AI agents. So they are aware of those bots, and they are declaratively stating that they don't want those specific bots to go and fetch their data for free, right? While in Brazil, the ones who block data is around 4 or 5 different ones. There's one, Irene even asked me what it was. I don't know. It's called a petal bot, which is apparently is very common to have this blocked. I don't know where it's from, but oh yeah, Huawei. All right, so now I know. But ChatGPT and Claude, you know, all these other ones are the most common ones. And this is a very interesting chart because you'll have people from big organizations in this room. I'm from a small organization. Nucleo has like 15 people. But you can see that bigger companies are blocking more user agents compared to their own sample size. You know, within in Brazil, within companies that have more than 120 employees, or bigger companies, they tend to block more, while smaller companies or blogs and stuff, they don't. In Indonesia, it's the same thing. I didn't put in the same chart because the employee range is a little bit different for some reason, because the data I got it from, but usually the trend is the same, right? Soon, we're going to release a tool for publishers, for you guys, where you can generate your own robot.txt file. You're just gonna put your URL there. You're gonna declare which bots you wanna block, and gonna generate a file for you. And all you have to do is kind of copy and paste and put it in the root file or root directory of your website. So this is a very cheap way of stating your preference. You know, you don't need to put that in your website. You don't need to update it very regularly. So it's a good practice to have, and we can talk more, and we also have like tutorials and stuff on how to do that the best way. But that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergio. Well, apparently, those who, I mean, like all this time, we always think, like in Indonesia, we always think like, oh, when we talk about data privacy, like people don't really, they don't care, they just ignore it. But it's not just people, yeah, it's also the news organization also don't care about their data. All right, so next we'll have Matt Prewitt, President of the RadicalxChange Foundation. Matt is a lawyer, technologist, and one of the leading voices pushing for the new governance model for data and AI. Matt, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. All right, thanks to the organizers for putting this together. Thanks for having me here. And I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what we're working on. Well, let me introduce myself quickly. So my name is Matt Prewitt. My organization is called RadicalxChange Foundation. We're a nonprofit civil society organization. What we think about is we think about technological transitions and the way that technological transitions put pressure on different kinds of democratic institutions, as well as other kinds of important markets and things like that, in important providers of public goods in society, such as journalism. Some of our work in the past has concerned new voting techniques. We also do a lot of work in the area of data policy. Before I was doing this, I was an antitrust lawyer, a plaintiff side antitrust litigator. So the sort of thread of my career has really been thinking about technology-driven power concentration and what kinds of interventions can be put together to mitigate it. All right, so here we go. So I want to start with a few remarks about information economics, basically. I'm then going to move on to introducing a new paradigm for controlling data and information. And finally, say a little bit about how news organizations can use this. So we have this important idea that's been around in public conversation for a long time, which is the marketplace of ideas. We think of ideas and information goods as something that can be sort of mediated through a marketplace. I think this is actually quite a strange and, in a way, misleading idea. Because if you think about what markets do, markets are, when they work efficiently, they create a situation in which the price of creating a new copy of a good is as low as possible. So in a market for physical goods, if it's working efficiently, then lots of different competitors are working to push down the price of producing a new scarf or something like that. And they push it down as low as they can push it down, and then people can come to the marketplace and buy a new scarf. But in the case of information markets, when people are producing information goods, which includes, for example, technological research or academic research or new ideas or, importantly, journalism, the same thing is going on. The price of producing a new copy is being pushed as low as it can be pushed. But when your good is information and the market is working efficiently, the price of producing a new copy is zero, which basically means that markets don't provide support for the creation of new information goods, except in certain exceptional situations. Basically, when markets aren't working properly, when markets are inefficient in some way, that's when you can get support for the production of information goods. So this phenomenon has been written about for a long time. The economist Ken Arrow, who's pictured there, wrote about it in the 1960s. And one of the important conclusions that he came up with was that, this was sort of addressed to American policymakers. It was like, okay, in the United States we have this great efficient market, but that doesn't actually mean that we're going to produce better information goods than anyone else in the world. It's entirely possible for, let's say, the Soviet Union to create better technology, to create a more informed society, to create all these kinds, to have better academia, and so on and so forth. Because the way to do that, all they have to do is just invest public goods in it, invest public money in it, and they can produce more support for information goods than the market economy. Now, on the flip side of this, the other part that's important to understand is the actual value to society of information goods can be enormous. So the fact that markets aren't supporting them doesn't mean that they aren't valuable. They're incredibly valuable. It's just that markets don't support them very well. So when we do get investment in information goods, where does it come from? It comes from basically frictions or inefficiencies or non-market kind of phenomena. One important place it comes from is the state. When the state intervenes to support information goods, you can get universities, you can get state-funded media, things like that. Another important place it comes from is intellectual property. Intellectual property rights are basically temporary monopolies, which means sort of inefficiencies in markets that are intentionally created by the state in order to facilitate investment in information goods. A third important situation is simply monopoly. So, situations of economic monopoly. When you have a firm that's in a unique position to benefit from information, they will be willing to invest in that information because they know that they sort of control some bottleneck in the economy that's going to enable them to profit from it. And fourth is sort of what you might call technological monopolies, or the sort of control of technological bottlenecks. So when you have an owner of the technical means to distribute certain information, they also have an incentive to invest in the production of those information goods. So think about the history of the news business for a moment. When, 100 years ago, the printing press was basically the best way to push information. It was the best technological means to sort of push new information out there into the world. And so whoever owned those printing presses had an incentive to pay journalists to invest in the production of these goods, because then they could sell newspapers. Now, once those newspapers are out, it's not very easy to sell yesterday's newspaper. Even then, the sort of the sort of fact that once the information's out there, you can't profit from it is important. But when you have the sort of best way of pushing information out, that's when you have a business model, basically, for producing information. So I think what we need now, basically, is for the journalism industry to think about where it sits in that in that scenario. And what that means is getting much more serious about protecting information and ensuring that that the institutions that are funding journalism and funding the production of this important information are in control of the technological means of basically pushing that information out into the world. In this moment, you can kind of think of AI as having taken the position of the printing press. AI is now kind of the most powerful way of just pushing information out into as many places as possible. And that undermines the position of producers of journalism. So there's lots of businesses that are now entering this marketplace, seeking to become essentially an intermediary between journalists and the builders of technology products. But I think it's important for journalists and for newspapers to be quite careful about what role those sort of new intermediaries will play. First of all, because those intermediaries can become monopolies themselves. Second, because if there's just sort of a too big of an ecosystem of all these new intermediaries, journalists can still effectively lose their bargaining power and their leverage in the marketplace. So when you start to think about a new model in which journalists do have some leverage, one of the most important things to think about, I think, is basically collective power. So if you create a situation in which many journalists are kind of collectively bargaining for the value of their information, rather than all sort of undermining each other, you can imagine them getting a much bigger return and sort of sitting closer to the choke point in the ecosystem where information is pushed out. So this brings me to the work that OpenMined is doing. So OpenMined is an open source software company, also a nonprofit that RadicalxChange is partnering with. OpenMind's background is in building privacy enhancing technology. So they build tools that enable sort of structured sharing of information. So instead of just sharing sort of complete data sets, you can use OpenMind's tools to share kind of partially shielded bits and pieces of information, to sort of meter out information from a database instead of just sharing the whole copy. And this works in a federated way. So we're using OpenMind's software. There is no sort of central repository of all of the information. You can have many participants in a network who all just have the information on their own servers, and that information can be queried by third parties according to rules that are sort of set up by the holders of the different data sites that we call them. All right, so what are the things that that journalists need to think about in order to get a foothold in their business model? I think one important thing is just not sharing everything. It's important to make sure that not all of the information that journalists invest in producing is just easily available for scraping or for other kind of means of access. And what does it mean to establish control over these sort of points of friction? One important point of friction is licensing. There's been lots of conversation about copyright and fair use and other kinds of legal means of controlling how third parties are able to access information. There's certain limits to that, but I think that journalists need to think about sort of all these things together. So we've got licensing. Another important point of friction is the sort of depth of information that's being shared. So is the entire article being shared? Is the entire corpus of research being shared? Or are we just sharing sort of, summaries and bits and pieces? A third important part of this conversation, I think, is the sort of transition from websites to platforms to AI. So it's a very useful paradigm, I think, to think of AI as kind of obsoleting websites. I think that the way that, the idea of information being shared by websites is in a way yesterday's technology and probably not the way that information will be shared and accessed in the future. Websites have already been sort of supplanted by like social media platforms and other means of getting access to information for most consumers. And we think about what will be going on in a few years. People will probably be browsing the informational world really through AI. So thinking of this concept of data sites or of journalists kind of controlling private repositories of data and then providing limited access to AI tools is an important sort of shift in how information can be shared. And finally, the idea of collectivizing power. So, instead of many different organizations making individual deals and being sort of divided and conquered in their interactions with AI companies, if they can collectively bargain, they can do much, much better. All right, so OpenMined software has been sort of pulled together in an interesting way in what we're calling a Talk to the World beta program. The way that it works basically is news organizations can work with OpenMined to deploy a data site, and then make the information on their data site available through an API access point, which is operating on the RAG layer. So there's been a little bit of conversation already about the difference between sort of LLMs and RAGs. Through an OpenMined data site, you can set up a RAG API access point and then create your own sort of rules, using an internal LLM or using other kinds of structured data shielding techniques to control exactly what kind of information can be queried by a third party. Finally, you can track the usage. And you can set up a payment rail that provides rules for how third parties compensate you when they access that information. Another important piece, picking up on the sort of collective power argument, is that using this network, many different news organizations can delegate control over their data site to a single third party, enabling a single third party to effectively act as like a collective bargainer. This works this can work many differently in different kinds of jurisdictions. There are going to be different sort of rules about how that can work, but that's a very, very powerful way for lots of different news organizations to gain a lot more economic power without simply the whole industry consolidating through acquisition. So this is what the tool looks like from sort of a user perspective. So these sort of RAG access points can be accessed simply by a user, which so you get an LLM response, and you get the source documents. That column on the left shows those 4 boxes are different data sites. So the user can simply check different data sites that they want to query or that they want to not query in order to get an aggregated response. And while this is sort of like a consumer-facing interface, this can also be done through an API. This can basically serve as like a plugin for third-party services like ChatGPT or equivalent that want to query many different data sites held by many different news organizations and aggregate all of the results into their results that they're providing to user. So the way that that these are set up is really quite simple, just to make it like a little bit more concrete. You can think of, so you've got a data owner. This is using the example of O'Reilly, which is an academic publisher that we're working with. You set up a data site. They install software on their server. It gets indexed for RAG usage. Oh, sorry, I skipped ahead a little bit there. And then it can be published to the network. You can set up rules and set up access points for AI product builders and AI services to query the information. As I was saying, you can also delegate control for that that kind of gatekeeping function to a third party. And then from the AI point of view, like if you're a builder of an AI product, you can plug into OpenMind's network, decide which data sites you want to include in your ultimate result, and see the sort of rules and the pricing of accessing all of those different sources of information, and pull them into an aggregated response. So one way to think about this is that this is a way of building networks for sharing information with AI that prevent large AI product builders from serving as a kind of a central point in between all of the users and all of the data providers. So I think that when we imagine a world in which AI products are basically the central point of mediation in the entire information landscape, that's a world in which the economic problem that I was discussing in the beginning becomes really quite devastating and undermines all of the market support for information production. If we kind of shift into this new paradigm in which we have many different data endpoints that are all connected with many different, that are sort of shielding their information, protecting from free sharing, using all of the leverage that they have, consolidating their power with whatever tools that are available to them, and then making metered, carefully considered access available to many different AI products. You can imagine a much more sort of pluralistic, multipolar ecosystem emerging in which some economic support for the sort of the critical work of primary information production remains supported. So I'll stop there. Please reach out to me at matt@radicalxchange.org. I would be really happy to discuss with any of you who are interested in working on this, in setting up these kinds of networks, whether you're on the information production side, whether you're a newspaper or a journalist, or whether you're like an association who's working to provide tools to help your members control their information better. Would be delighted to work with you. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Matt. All right. Before I ask questions from the audience, I'd like to ask Sergio first. Most of media outlets, especially AMC members, are categorized as small news outlets. Consist of probably 3 to 10 people, including the management, journalists and management. But they work on really segmented issues and content like vulnerable communities, women, really specific. So is it how feasible it is for the smaller news organization to put or set the robot.txt in their website? Because from your data, it's like mostly only big news organization. And then for Matt, how feasible it is to establish the data sites? Is it like, can some news organization working on different topics, you know, like Kompas, Tempo, Hukum Online, they created data sets just related to law and regulation, or must be like under like big association like AMC? So who wants to, just like very brief here.
Let me go first because I want to ask Matt something as well. About so the reason bigger organizations like media moguls like Arca here, you know? I'm kidding, I'm just kidding, but the reason bigger media organizations have more state more their desires in their robot.txt files is that they're possibly more aware. It's not a technological issue. You know, as I mentioned in my presentation, the robot.txt protocol, it is basically a text file. It's a Word file, right? It's a text file that you put in your website, right? So I assume most of those organizations have somebody that set their website up for them. And have access to the main directory of their website. All they need to do is generate a robot.txt file with their permissions or disallowances, I guess. Don't even know if that's a word, but and upload that file there. You know, and there's very good tutorials online about it. We are going to publish a tool that will help news organizations to do that. So I think it's more of a thing around awareness that this exists and this is possible, and you can publicly state your permissiveness for those companies to use or not your data. Then it is a technical barrier, you know.
All right.
And if I can ask Matt, on top of your question, sure. Is there a way that you can plug like a Stripe or any tool to collect payments for the data usage?
Yeah, that's like already built. So there's a payment rail in what OpenMined have built already. And yeah, I mean, in answer to your question, the deploying a data site is not complicated. It's like, I would say that the sort of technical difficulty of it is like roughly equivalent to setting up a website. You know, so it's it requires just, I don't know, some sort of semi-technical familiarity with computer systems to be able to do it. But I actually think it's quite a good metaphor actually to think about this sort of data site paradigm as similar to the way that news organizations needed to shift to digital 20 years ago. You know, 20 years ago, news organizations needed to think about, okay, we've had a paper, now we probably need to have a website. I think that this is kind of the beginning of a similar paradigm shift in like a new way of controlling data, a new way of distributing data for the AI era. And it's kind of similar to that in the level of technical complexity. So small organizations can absolutely do it. Small organizations can absolutely set up a data site. OpenMind's team is, you know, can support them in doing it, and it's free. You know, it's a nonprofit building free software. But there are more complex elements of it that, that will arise down the road. So for example, if you want to set up tools for more precisely controlling what AI providers are able to pull out of your data site, you know, then there starts to be a little bit more thought required in how to set it up. And also, if you want to do this kind of collectivization step where you group many different data sites together and set up kind of mutual access rules between them, that requires institutional cooperation.
Yeah. So it means that if we can track and if we can identify and track the data, it means that we can also differentiate the price, right? Because like content from investigative journalism is like supposed to be more expensive than content from, you know, like just interviewing people or like meet officials in their office and then like.
Yeah. I mean, the problem of data pricing is a really, really difficult one.
Yeah,
because
I think that's will give AMSI more headache than creating the data sites later. Yeah. All right, let's have questions from the audience. 1, 2, okay. Satu lagi mana? 2 aja ya. 2. Oh, satu lagi. Oh, okay. Silakan. I'll give it to Perdani first, because from small news outlets, but really big impact, yeah. So I'll give you the first.
Thank you very much, Mbak Ika. Thank you very much to Sergio and Matt. Very interesting initiatives, and we just discussed that probably Project Multatuli will try your products.
Yay!
amazing.
So my question is, Project Multatuli, usually we provide and create news about underrepresented groups, such as indigenous people. And we apply Creative Commons where people can republish our news. Our objective is to decentralize information. So in this logic, I was thinking that it probably best for Project Multatuli to open their data to all the LLM. What do you think about this?
This is a long conversation. I think that the sort of open data philosophy just doesn't quite work economically. Basically, you know, I mean, one way into this conversation is, you know, actually, RadicalxChange and OpenMined are working with Creative Commons right now on an initiative to create what are called preference signals, which is kind of a similar updated version of robots.txt, which is to say, like, Creative Commons basically is building a new set of kind of addenda to their licenses that enable their people using the licenses to signal how they would prefer AI companies to access the data or not. And so the reason that's interesting is because, you know, I mean, Creative Commons has been the biggest supporter of open data for 20 years, 25 years. And even they are now thinking, okay, you know, there are a lot of situations in which people producing free content are being economically undermined by AI. So I think it is important to consider more restrictive means of distributing information in order to keep businesses sustainable. Now, there are certain kinds of information where the public good of distributing it is enormous, and there are reasons to distribute the information for free on non-economic grounds. And so you should continue to do that. But I think that this is not an either or. It's possible for organizations like yours to think about, okay, which parts of what we're creating should be really, you know, really should be free and distributed everywhere in the public interest, and which parts of it would it be exploitative for AI companies to incorporate into their product, right? And if you can draw that kind of distinction, you can start to make decisions about what to put into a more restrictive data site and what to distribute, in a completely unrestricted way.
All right.
If I can just,
Yep, sure.
there's a good story from Brazil about this. I think it's beautiful that you have your content as Creative Commons, and as Matt said, there are several layers and levels and permissions and stuff. But there's an organization in Brazil, a very good friend of mine, she's the head of this organization, and they wrote a technical book about data journalism and how to handle data. And it was a free book, and they put it on their website for free for anyone, Creative Commons you can use. A lot of people got the same material, put a new cover, and were charging like $10 on Amazon, and making money out of the thing that she did for free. And and that's fair game. She did that. She said, oh, you can use it for anything. It's Creative Commons. It was the most permissive license on Creative Commons. But at the same time, what she did there, and her staff, of course, had a lot of value, as what you do has a lot of value. So it's good that people are rethinking the ways to share that, because those organizations are making billions of dollars out of investments, out of commercial deals or whatever. And at the same time, you are 10 people trying to struggle to make a budget every year and all this kind of stuff. So if you can think of new ways, and we can talk more, and Matt probably knows a lot more about this than I do, but it's good that you want to do that, but it's also important for you to think of other alternatives, especially when dealing with billion-dollar companies.
And if I can, it's like the critical question in a way. So I think it's worth one more remark about it, which is that I think that 20 years ago, the way in which data was shared was this kind of binary thing. It was like either you're sharing or you're not sharing. And it's possible now to think about more intermediate, more nuanced ways of sharing. I think that's kind of the key. So for example, if you've got, suppose you have one of your journalists does an amazing piece of investigative work showing, oh, okay, such and such official did something corrupt, and here's how we know, and here's why it's important, right? It's possible to share that. It's possible to share the conclusion of that, and how the reporter came to the information, without sharing the full text of the article, without sharing the sort of full analysis and the full kind of relationship with the journalist, let's say, that is given by other kinds of content provision. And you can set those sort of rules, those sort of fuzzy lines between different kinds of data sharing. You can use LLMs and AI tools to set those kind of rules. So you can kind of just tell the computer, like, share the conclusions of this. Like, share the conclusions, share the basic sources, share the findings, give them enough to know that this is a credible reporting, and here's the conclusion. But then the rest of the content that the journalists do can actually be kept in a data site and put behind a rules for payment, so that the complete value isn't being taken.
All right. Second questions, and the third one. Fourth. Silakan, Pak.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. My name is Heru Catur. I'm from AMSI. My question to Sergio. Actually, I'm looking forward for the report for the full report of this research, because I'm kind of more skeptical that using robot.txt would prevent any AI bot to stop scraping all of our content, because we have done with the robot.txt, and even though that we don't know all of the AI bot that is coming to our site, but several AI bots, we put it on our robot.txt, but the fact is that our content is still out there. When we do some experiment with the help from my fellow journalists, that because they have from the tempo we have a unique style on how we storytelling of our content. They can identify several style how they package the content to our publishing. So they identify that some of this, the indication is that some of our content is still going out there with this. How we can be sure that robotaxi would prevent any of this AI bot would scrap to our site?
Well,
that's my first question. The second question for Matt is that the building, establishing the data site means that we provide the spatial access for the bot to access our content, right? So we should have from the publisher outlet, we should have our end user outlet, news outlet, to provide services for the end user to access our content. And then we also have to different channel to provide access for the bot to consume our content. Is that my understanding is what?
So you want to clarify how
Yes.
it works, yeah?
Yeah. If that we have both of these channels to provide to publish our content, and then how can we sure that the existing AI bot would prefer going to our data site rather than to our general public site?
Or how to track?
Because that's quite challenging for us to prevent those things.
Yeah.
Because from last research that I do is that several journals stated that that's a lot of AI bot and AI company acquiring the data from the publisher in an unethical way. That's why today's discussion is make me more skeptical to enforce the ethical way of AI. In fact, that there's proof that they do something that is unethical to
All right, Pak. Pak siapa, maaf?
Heru Catur.
Okay, Pak Harold Tanjung, the media mogul, yeah. Okay, thank you, Pak. We got your point. So, who wants to address first?
I think, to your point, I think this is exactly the right attitude. So you cannot be sure that they won't scrape your data because you have a robot.txt directive there. But it's the same thing if you go outside, they're cleaning the ballroom, and it's wet, the floor is wet, they put the sign there, don't step here because you might fall, right? This is a disclaimer that, you shouldn't step there because it's slippery and might fall and break your arm or whatever. I cannot prevent you from going there. You can go there. But if you fall there, there is that disclaimer, there is that directive saying you shouldn't, and then you make like a case for you and to avoid liability, for instance. So you cannot make sure, and it's good that you doubt that it ever will, because it probably will, but at least you're making your statement, you're making your case that that content is yours and you don't want them there, right?
So Sergio, other than robot.txt, should the news organization also put like statement about their policies and choices like you mentioned before, so that just to let you know that we already warn you, don't do this? Is it easier for later for the news organization if they want to sue or like litigation for the
Yeah,
company?
it doesn't hurt, but it already existed. Because you go to a website, you see a brand, you say copyright. You know?
Okay.
Yeah, you see, oh, this content is protected by intellectual property. It already
To
exists.
differentiate it with just some blogs, yeah. This is not
Yeah.
just some blog that you
I mean,
can
you-
crawl.
you-
Yeah, it has copyright.
Yeah, you can try to technically block and you put some code behind it that's very complex and they cannot get it. Like, it's very hard to scrape Facebook. Very hard. I used to scrape the shit out of Facebook. I used to get a lot of data from Facebook. It's very hard now to scrape Facebook because they're making technically hard to scrape it. But they don't want you to. And they're going out of their way to do that. So we don't have that bandwidth to do what they do. But you know, you're just at least making your case and stating, I don't want you to get my content.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to do whatever is available, whatever means can be done to make scraping difficult and to protect information on that side. Because I agree, you know, if you've got the same information available on a public website as you have on a data site, then people are going to take it. But I think the paradigm needs to shift a little bit. So do whatever you can do to prevent scraping. Robots.txt, great. It's not going to be enough, but it's great. Use licensing. The other thing is that, you know, in different legal regimes, copyright may work or it may not work. We'll see what happens with the fair use exception in different jurisdictions. If copyright is a protection, then that's great. If it's not, then if no copyright and no sort of contractual or terms of use kind of arrangement can protect your ability to, you know, can uphold your ability to protect public information, then you have to have some information that's not available. You have to have some information that's not available on a public website and make that the content of a data site.
I like your analogy of scraping Facebook. I think the idea here is to make it less attractive for the AI robot to collect our data. Because, you know, like when you scrap social media data, sometimes you collect data that you don't need. And then if you want to collect data that you need, you have to go through multiple steps and then you just give up. Okay, let's just analyze whatever we have, yeah? So I think the idea is to make it less attractive also, yeah.
Thank you. I think this debate is really important. I think it's not an easy decision to block content. We've been discussing this internally in the association in Brazil, and we know that the traditional newspaper association suggested to their members to block their content, and I think that that's related also to the fact that the larger organizations in Brazil are starting to block. But I think that's very complex when you include the dimension of access to quality information, and basically we are making it would be basically a collective move to get out of spaces where people are looking for information. And we've already, Sergio already said that synthetic data guarantees bad responses for queries. So I think that it's really important for us to discuss this in a level in which we understand how complex the decision of blocking content can be if we don't do it in a way that is articulated collectively and guarantees that we are able to negotiate in a way that makes us stronger. Because if we do this individually, it's only, I mean, we are only creating problems for the informational ecosystem. So I think that that's really important for us to take into account. We, in the association, we don't have a position, and we've been discussing that. We haven't guided our members into doing something specific because we haven't gotten to a consensus on how we should act on that. This is one specific thing that I think we should take into account. And one other thing I wanted to know, Matt, regarding our product. I wanted to have an idea on how many organizations you've already implemented this and how the results are happening, because in Brazil we have a very specific context right now that we have an AI bill going through Congress, And in the AI bill, there is a copyright article, and we have been questioned by the finance ministry that's responsible for defending the bill with other parts of the government, if there are tools that could possibly guarantee this control for copyright, for payment of copyright for the use of the content. And we are in this process of mapping these types of tools to share with them and understand how effective they would be. So I'd love to know more about the implementation and how the results you guys are having already. Thank you.
Yeah. We're very early. You know, we've got we're working with you know, about a dozen organizations, mostly small ones, in a you know, at the sort of beta product level. We hope to really make it. I think everyone's in the U.S. that we're working with right now. Yeah. We'd like it to be much bigger than that. It's capable of scaling much bigger, and then on the sort of copyright thing, I guess it's a somewhat complicated question, but I'm not sure that this technology really changes the arguments that you should be making with regard to copyright, because you know, copyright is a means of securing protection for information that is already way out there in the public. You know, this is a way of controlling the way that information makes its way into AI systems. So it's they're kind of different problems, and I think that shoring up copyright protection for public information is important, regardless of how well this product works.
Right. Is there any more questions? So if not, oh, sorry, Mas.
Thank you, Mbak Ika. One question to Matt. You mentioned that it's quite easy for a news organization to install the script, but I just wonder if you have any experience, you know, working with an association like ours. For instance, we have 500 online publishers, and we have different level of technology capacities. What's your suggestion if we, for instance, as an association, decides to try out this approach?
Okay, before you answer that, is there any more? If not, I can also follow up on Blikomang questions, because tomorrow we're going to talk about action plan, right? So what are the low-hanging fruits for publishers in the global south, or specifically publishers in Indonesia and in the region, that we can or we should do from whatever your ideas in blocking or reclaiming the data? So who wants, Sergio, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I think adding a robots.txt directive to your website is a very long-hanging fruit, because there, like, as I mentioned, there's almost no cost associated to that. It's just a file, and it can give you a lot of benefits for very low cost and very low complexity. So this is one. And the second one, I would argue, is that, to Matt's point from before, is just talk amongst yourself. You have a very good association of news organizations here that has over 500 members, is incredible. And you have a lot of bargain power. So you already have the collaboration, already have the communication among yourselves. And I think that you can do this together. So it's very easy to start the conversation among yourselves. So that will be my 2 bits.
Mm-hmm.
So we're also working with journalist associations in the United States. We're at an early stage in our work with them, so they haven't gotten to the level yet of deploying this with all of their member organizations. They're using it internally. But I think that you know, the role of a trade organization in helping this kind of software permeate the industry is really, really important, because trade associations can, I think this fits within the ambit of a trade association in the sense of collective resourcing for their members. Particularly in the case of much smaller journalistic organizations, thinking through what the solution should be, thinking through what the sort of shared resourcing should be, and making it as easy as possible for them to deploy from the point of view of a trade association is I think, a very, very valuable role to play. OpenMind's internal resources this is their mission, right? I mean, their mission is to help this kind of thing happen. So there's great opportunity to do it.
All right, so if there's no more questions, I think it's important for, I just want to emphasize again that in this era of digital era, data is the new oil, yeah? Data is the new gold, is the new nickel, because Indonesia is. And then I think if you are selling your resources, your data, your nickel individually, I think your position will be vulnerable in the market. But if you have like a collective, like selling it through association, for instance, or selling it collectively, then you will have bargaining position to sell the resources that you have. But then before that, it's still important to protect your resources, and then to make the most benefit of it, yeah. I think that's the takeaways from these panels, and I'm sure Matt and Sergio are happy if you want to reach out to them to discuss future collaboration or assistance, yeah. Okay.
Definitely, yes.
Thank you very much, everyone, for staying until this afternoon. Terima kasih, selamat sore, and have a good rest, Matt.